Officer James Parker was driving his police car along Highway 27 on a quiet spring morning. The road was empty except for a few cars. The sun was bright in the sky. James had been a police officer for 15 years. He was a tall man with brown hair that was starting to turn gray. His blue uniform was neat and clean. He was known as a fair officer who did his job well. James saw a black car going a bit too fast. He turned on his lights and followed the car. The black car slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. James parked his police car behind it and got out. He walked up to the driver's side window of the black car. The woman driving the car had dark hair with some gray in it. She was about 50 years old. She looked tired and sad. James did not know her, but something about her seemed familiar to him. "Good morning, ma'am," James said. "Do you know why I stopped you today?" The woman looked up at him. She did not smile. "I was going too fast," she said in a quiet voice. James nodded. "Can I see your license and car papers, please?" The woman opened her purse and took out her wallet. She handed James her license. Her name was Margaret Wilson. James still felt like he knew her from somewhere, but he could not remember where. James took the license back to his car. He sat down and put her information into his computer. While he waited for the computer to show her information, he thought about where he might know her from. The name Wilson was common. There were many Wilsons in town. The computer screen showed her information. Margaret Wilson. No tickets before. No problems with the law. James was about to write her a warning when he saw something else on the screen. Margaret Wilson was listed as the mother of Michael Wilson. James felt his heart beat faster. Michael Wilson. That name hit him like a rock. 5 years ago, James had been in a very bad situation. He was at a store when a man with a gun came in to steal money. The man pointed his gun at James. James was not ready. He thought he was going to die. A young man named Michael Wilson had jumped in front of James. The bullet hit Michael instead of James. Michael had saved James' life. Michael lived but was hurt badly. James had visited Michael in the hospital many times. They had become friends. 2 years after that, Michael died in a car crash. James went to the funeral. He remembered seeing Margaret there, the mother who had lost her only son. James had tried to talk to her at the funeral, but she was too sad to talk to anyone. And now here she was. James was holding her license in his hand. Today was a special day, James remembered. It was Michael's birthday. Margaret was probably going to visit her son's grave. James felt very sad. Michael had been a hero. He saved James without thinking about himself. James had thought about Michael many times since he died. James wished he could do something to thank Michael. And now James had a chance to do something nice for Michael's mother. James got out of his car and walked back to Margaret's car. He had made up his mind about what to do. He would not give her a ticket, but he would do more than that. He would tell her how much her son meant to him. Maybe that would help her feel better on this hard day. James walked back to Margaret's car. His heart was beating fast. He was not sure what to say to her. How do you thank someone whose son died after saving your life? Margaret was looking straight ahead. She did not turn to look at James when he came to her window. Her hands were tight on the steering wheel. "Mrs. Wilson," James said, "I am not going to give you a ticket today." Margaret looked surprised. She turned to look at him. "Thank you, officer," she said. Her voice was flat. She did not sound happy or sad. "There's something else I want to tell you," James said. He took a deep breath. "I knew your son, Michael." Margaret's face changed. Her eyes got wide. She stared at James like she was seeing a ghost. "What did you say?" she asked. "Your son, Michael, saved my life 5 years ago," James said. "I was the officer at the store robbery. The one he jumped in front of. The one he took a bullet for." Margaret did not speak. She just looked at James. Her face was hard to read. Was she angry? Was she sad? James could not tell. "I visited him in the hospital many times," James went on. "He was a wonderful young man. We became friends. When I heard he died in that car crash, I was heartbroken. I went to his funeral, but you were too upset to talk to anyone that day. I never got to tell you how sorry I was." Margaret still did not speak. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Today is his birthday, isn't it?" James asked. I remembered because he told me when we were talking in the hospital. He would have been 30 today. Margaret nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. 30 today." "Where are you going?" James asked, though he thought he knew the answer. "To the graveyard," Margaret said, "to put flowers on his grave." James made a quick decision. "Would you mind if I came with you?" he asked. "I would like to pay my respects too. I owe him everything." Margaret looked at James for a long time. Her face was still hard to read. Finally, she spoke. "Why not?" she said. "He talked about you a lot when he was in the hospital. He said you were a good man." James felt a lump in his throat. He swallowed hard. "Thank you," he said. "I'll follow you in my car." Margaret nodded and started her car. James went back to his police car. He called the station to say he was taking a break. Then he followed Margaret's black car down the highway. They drove for about 20 minutes. Neither of them spoke. They were both thinking about Michael. James wondered what Margaret was feeling. Was she angry at him? Was she glad to meet the man her son had saved? James did not know. He only knew that he needed to honor Michael's memory. He needed to show Margaret that her son's sacrifice had meant something. The graveyard was on a small hill outside of town. It was a peaceful place with green grass and tall trees. There were many graves with stones marking who was buried there. Some graves had flowers on them. Others did not. Margaret parked her car and got out. She opened the back door and took out a bunch of flowers. They were white lilies, Michael's favorite flowers. James parked his police car next to hers. He got out and followed Margaret as she walked among the graves. Margaret seemed to know exactly where she was going. She had been here many times before. She walked to a grave near a big oak tree. The gravestone was made of black marble. It had Michael's name on it, Michael James Wilson. It also had the dates of when he was born and when he died. Below that were the words "beloved son and hero." James stood a few steps back while Margaret put the flowers on the grave. She knelt down and touched the gravestone. She was saying something very quietly. James could not hear her words. He felt like he was seeing something very private. After a few minutes, Margaret stood up. She wiped tears from her eyes. She turned to James. "He always wanted to be a police officer," Margaret said, "just like his grandfather. He was going to apply to the police academy that year, the year he died." James did not know what to say. His throat felt tight. "I'm so sorry," he finally said. "Every time I see a police officer, I think of him," Margaret said. "What he might have been. The life he might have had." James nodded. "I think about him too," he said. "Every day. Every time I put on this uniform, I remember what he did for me. How brave he was." Margaret looked at James for a long time. "You look like you were worth saving," she said finally. James felt tears in his eyes. "I try to be," he said. "I try to live a life that honors what he did." They stood in silence for a while, both of them looking at the grave, both of them thinking about Michael and the life he never got to live. After some time, Margaret spoke again. "I have his things at home," she said. "His medals from school, his pictures, things he wrote. Would you like to see them?" James was surprised by the offer. "Yes," he said. "I would like that very much." Margaret nodded. "Follow me back to my house then," she said. "It's not far from here." They walked back to their cars. Margaret drove her black car and James followed in his police car. They drove through the town and into a neighborhood with small, neat houses. Margaret parked in front of a white house with blue shutters. James parked behind her. They got out of their cars. A neighbor across the street was looking at them with interest. It was not every day that a police car parked on their quiet street. Margaret ignored the neighbor. She walked up to her front door and unlocked it. James followed her inside. The house was clean and simple. There were pictures on the walls. Many of them showed Michael at different ages, as a baby, as a young boy, as a teenager. The last ones showed him as a young man just before he died. James looked at the pictures with interest. He had only known Michael in the hospital. It was strange to see him as a child growing up, to see the person he had been before that day in the store. Margaret's house was small but neat. The living room had a couch and 2 chairs. There was a TV in the corner. On the walls were many pictures. "This way," Margaret said. She led James to a room at the back of the house. It had been Michael's room. It was just as he had left it. There was a bed with a blue cover, a desk with books on it, posters on the walls of sports teams and movie heroes. Margaret went to a shelf. She took down a box. She put it on the bed and opened it. Inside were things from Michael's life: school awards, sports medals, birthday cards, small toys from when he was little. All the things a mother keeps to remember her child. She took out a medal. "This is from when he won the School Brave Act Award," she said. "He was 16. He saved a girl from drowning at the lake." James looked at the medal. It was gold with a blue ribbon. "He was always brave," James said. "Yes," Margaret agreed. "From when he was little. He was never afraid." She took out a small book. "This is his diary from high school," she said. She opened it and showed James a page. Michael had written about wanting to be a police officer, about wanting to help people and make the world better. James read the words. They sounded like Michael. The Michael he had known in the hospital. The young man who had talked about his dreams while he was getting better from his bullet wound. Margaret showed James more things from the box. Pictures of Michael with friends. A baseball from his first home run. A letter he had written to her from summer camp when he was 12. James listened and looked. He felt like he was getting to know Michael better. Not just the brave young man who had saved his life, but the whole person. The boy who had grown up in this house. The son Margaret had loved so much. After a while they sat in the living room. Margaret made tea. They talked more about Michael. James told her about the talks he had with Michael in the hospital. How Michael had made him laugh even when Michael was in pain. How Michael had never complained. Margaret told James stories about Michael as a child. How he had always stood up for smaller kids at school. How he had helped old people in the neighborhood. How he had worked hard at everything he did. As they talked, the sadness between them changed into something else. They were not just sad anymore. They were sharing good memories of someone they both had cared about. Someone who had touched both their lives. James looked at his watch. He had been at Margaret's house for 2 hours. He needed to go back to work. "I have to go now," he said. "Thank you for showing me Michael's things, for telling me about him." Margaret nodded. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It helps to talk about him, especially today." James stood up. He had an idea. "Would you like to come to the police station sometime?" he asked. "I could show you around." Michael would have worked there if things had been different. Margaret thought about it. "Yes," she said. "I would like that." James wrote down his phone number for her. "Call me when you want to come," he said. "Anytime." Margaret took the paper with his number. She walked him to the door. James stepped outside. The sun was starting to go down. "I am glad we met today," Margaret said, "even if it was because I was speeding." James smiled. "Me too," he said. "Take care, Mrs. Wilson." A week later, Margaret called James. She wanted to visit the police station. James was happy to hear from her. He told her to come the next day. Margaret arrived at the police station at 10 in the morning. She was wearing a nice blue dress. She looked nervous. The police station was a big building with many officers walking around. It was a busy place. James met her at the front desk. He was wearing his uniform. He smiled when he saw her. "Thank you for coming," he said. Margaret smiled back. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Thank you for inviting me," she said. James gave Margaret a visitor badge to wear. Then he showed her around the station. He showed her the main office where officers did their paperwork. He showed her the meeting room where they got their daily tasks. He showed her the break room where they ate lunch. The other officers were curious about Margaret. James introduced her to them. "This is Mrs. Wilson," he said. "She is Michael's mother." The older officers knew who Michael was. They had heard about what he did. They shook Margaret's hand with respect. They told her how brave her son had been, how he was a hero to them. One old officer named Bill had known Michael's grandfather. They had been partners many years ago. Bill told Margaret stories about her father-in-law, about the good police work he had done, about how respected he had been. Margaret listened to the stories with interest. These were things she had not known about her husband's father, things that connected her family to this place. After the tour, James took Margaret to lunch at a small restaurant near the station. They sat at a table by the window. They ordered sandwiches and coffee. "Thank you for today," Margaret said. "It means a lot to see where Michael would have worked." James nodded. "I am glad you came," he said. "Everyone at the station was happy to meet you." They ate their lunch and talked. James told her about his job, about the good parts and the hard parts. Margaret told him about her job at the library, about the books she loved and the people she met. They were becoming friends. The sad reason they had met was still there. The pain of Michael's death would never go away completely. But something good was growing from that pain, a friendship that neither of them had expected. After lunch, James walked Margaret back to her car. Before she left, she gave him something. It was a small photo of Michael in a frame. It showed Michael smiling at his college graduation. "I want you to have this," Margaret said, "to remember him by." James took the photo carefully. "Thank you," he said. His voice was full of feeling. "I will keep it on my desk." Margaret nodded. She got into her car and drove away. James watched her go. He held the photo of Michael and thought about how strange life was, how pain and joy could be mixed together, how endings could also be beginnings. He went back to the police station. He put the photo of Michael on his desk where he could see it every day, a reminder of the young man who had saved his life, a reminder to live that life well. Time passed. Spring turned into summer. James and Margaret stayed friends. Sometimes they had lunch together. Sometimes they visited Michael's grave together. They talked about their lives. They helped each other when they needed it. One day, James got a call at the police station. It was Margaret. Her voice sounded scared. "James, can you come to my house?" she said. "Someone broke in while I was at work." James got in his police car right away. He drove fast to Margaret's house. 2 other police cars were already there. Officers were looking around the house for evidence. Margaret was standing in her front yard. She looked very upset. Her house had been broken into. Things were stolen. But worst of all, Michael's room had been messed up. The box with his special things was gone. James felt very angry when he saw this. He put his arm around Margaret's shoulders. "We will find who did this," he promised. "We will get Michael's things back." The other officers found some evidence: fingerprints on the window, footprints in the garden. A neighbor had seen a red truck parked near the house during the day. James worked hard on the case. He talked to people in the neighborhood. He checked places where stolen things were often sold. He looked for the red truck. After 3 days, James got a tip. Someone had seen a man with a box of medals and photos trying to sell them at a pawn shop. The man had been turned away because the shop owner thought the items were personal and might be stolen. James went to the area near the pawn shop. He looked for the man who had been described to him, a tall man with a red cap and a blue jacket. James was walking down a street when he saw the man. He was carrying a box that looked like the one from Michael's room. James followed him. The man went into an old apartment building. James called for backup. Then he went into the building. He followed the man to an apartment on the 3rd floor. James knocked on the door. The man opened the door. He looked surprised to see a police officer. James could see Michael's box on a table behind the man. James arrested the man for breaking into Margaret's house and stealing. Other officers came to help. They found more stolen things in the apartment, things from other houses that had been broken into. James took Michael's box back to the police station. He called Margaret to tell her the good news. "Your son's things are safe," he said. "We caught the man who took them." Margaret came to the police station right away. When she saw the box with Michael's things, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said to James. "Thank you so much." James smiled. "I promised we would find it," he said. And we did. Margaret looked through the box. Everything seemed to be there. The medals, the photos, the diary, the baseball. All the memories of her son were safe. Margaret looked at James with gratitude. "You have helped me so much," she said. "First by honoring Michael's memory. Now by getting his things back. I don't know how to thank you." James shook his head. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I am just doing what Michael would have done. What he did do. Helping others." Margaret nodded. "Yes," she said. "That was Michael. Always helping others. Always doing the right thing." Fall came to the town. The leaves on the trees turned red and gold. The air got cooler. James and Margaret continued their friendship. They had dinner together once a week. They went for walks in the park. They watched movies at Margaret's house. One evening, they were having dinner at a small restaurant. They were talking and laughing. For the first time in years, Margaret seemed truly happy. The sadness that had been with her since Michael's death was not gone, but it was lighter. As they were eating, a young police officer came into the restaurant. He looked around and then came to their table. "Excuse me, Officer Parker," he said to James. "There's an emergency. A bad car crash on Highway 27. Multiple cars involved. They need all officers." James stood up right away. "I'm sorry, Margaret," he said. "I have to go." Margaret nodded. She understood. "Go," she said. "People need help." James left money for the dinner. Then he rushed out with the young officer. They got into their police cars and drove fast to the crash site. When James got there, he saw a terrible scene. 3 cars had crashed. 1 was on fire. People were hurt and needed help. Other police officers and firefighters were already working to help. James ran to a car that was turned over on its side. A young woman was trapped inside. She was scared and hurt. James talked to her calmly while firefighters worked to get her out. He held her hand and told her everything would be okay. It took 2 hours to help all the people from the crash. Some were badly hurt and went to the hospital in ambulances, but everyone was alive. The quick work of the police and firefighters had saved lives. When the work was done, James was tired and dirty. His uniform was stained with oil and blood, but he felt good. He had helped people. That was why he had become a police officer. He drove back to the restaurant, but it was closed. It was very late now. He drove to Margaret's house instead. The lights were still on. She was waiting up for him. Margaret opened the door when he knocked. She looked worried. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I heard it was a bad crash." James nodded. "I'm fine," he said. "Just tired." Everyone survived. Margaret let him in. She made him coffee. James sat at her kitchen table and told her about the crash, about the people he had helped, about the good work the emergency teams had done. Margaret listened. When he finished talking, she looked at him with new understanding. "This is what Michael wanted to do," she said. "This kind of work, helping people on their worst days." "Yes," James said, "and he would have been good at it, like his grandfather." They talked more about Michael, about what kind of police officer he would have been, about the lives he would have saved. It was sad talk, but also good talk. It honored Michael's memory by imagining the life he had wanted. Late that night, James went home. As he drove, he thought about the crash and the people he had helped. He thought about Michael, who had saved his life. He thought about Margaret, who was healing from her loss. Life was a circle of people helping people, of lives touching other lives, of pain and healing all mixed together. Winter came with cold winds and snow. Christmas was coming, a hard time for people who had lost loved ones. Margaret told James she always felt sad at Christmas. It had been Michael's favorite holiday. James had an idea. He talked to the other officers at the police station. They all agreed to help. They started collecting money and planning something special. A week before Christmas, James asked Margaret to come to the police station. He told her there was something important he wanted to show her. Margaret was curious. She came to the station on a snowy afternoon. When she arrived at the station, she was surprised. All the officers were gathered in the main room. The chief of police was there too. They all smiled when Margaret walked in. James led Margaret to the front of the room. The chief stepped forward. He was holding something in his hand. "Mrs. Wilson," he said in a formal voice, "we have a tradition at this station. Every year we give an award to a citizen who has shown great courage and service to others. This year we are giving the award to your son, Michael." The chief handed Margaret a plaque. It had Michael's name on it. It said Michael James Wilson. Hero. Friend. The kind of person we all should be. Margaret took the plaque with shaking hands. She could not speak. Tears filled her eyes. The chief continued, "We are also starting something new this year, a scholarship in Michael's name. It will help a young person who wants to be a police officer. Your son will help make new officers for years to come." Now Margaret was really crying. James put his arm around her shoulders to support her. The other officers came forward one by one. They shook her hand. They told her how much they respected what her son had done. After the ceremony, James and Margaret went to lunch. Margaret put the plaque on the table where she could see it. She kept touching it, as if to make sure it was real. "Thank you," she said to James, "for arranging all this. It wasn't just me," James said. "Every officer wanted to do it. Michael is a hero to all of us." Margaret smiled through her tears. "He would have been so proud," she said. "So happy to be part of the police family." "He is part of it," James said. "He always will be." That afternoon, they went to Michael's grave. James had brought a small police badge. He placed it on the grave next to the flowers Margaret had brought. Snow was falling softly. Everything was quiet and peaceful. As they stood there, a young boy and his mother walked by. The boy stopped to look at the grave. The mother tried to pull him along, but the boy pointed at the badge on the grave. "Was he a police officer?" the boy asked Margaret. Margaret knelt down to talk to the boy. "He wanted to be," she said. "He was very brave. He saved people's lives." The boy looked impressed. "I want to be brave too," he said. Margaret smiled at him. "That's a good thing to want," she said. The boy and his mother walked on. Margaret stood up and looked at James. "Michael is still touching lives," she said. James nodded. "That's what heroes do," he said. "They keep making the world better even after they're gone." They walked back to their cars through the falling snow. Christmas lights were starting to appear in windows. The world was getting ready to celebrate. And for the first time in years, Margaret felt ready to celebrate too. A year passed. Spring came again. It was almost time for Michael's birthday. James and Margaret were at the police station. Margaret was there for a special reason. The first Michael Wilson Scholarship was being given today. A young person who wanted to be a police officer would get help paying for their training. Many people were at the station for the ceremony, officers and their families. People from the town who had heard about Michael and his brave act. The mayor was there to give a speech. Margaret was nervous. She would have to speak to the crowd. She would have to talk about Michael. James stood beside her, giving her support. The ceremony began. The chief spoke about courage and service, about the kind of people who become police officers, about Michael, who had shown the true spirit of police work even though he never got to wear the uniform. The mayor spoke next. He talked about how one brave act can change many lives, how Michael's sacrifice had touched the whole town, how his memory was being honored by helping new young officers. Then it was Margaret's turn to speak. She walked to the front of the room. She looked out at all the faces watching her. She took a deep breath. "My son Michael always wanted to help others," Margaret began. "From when he was a little boy, he would stand up for people who needed help. He would share what he had. He would do what was right even when it was hard." Margaret spoke about Michael's life, about his dreams, about the kind of person he had been. Her voice was clear and strong. She was not afraid anymore. She was proud of her son and wanted everyone to know about him. The crowd listened with respect. Many people had tears in their eyes. They could feel the love in Margaret's words. They could see the kind of young man Michael had been. When Margaret finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then everyone stood up and clapped for a long time. It was a standing ovation for Margaret and for Michael. After the speeches, it was time to give the scholarship. A young woman named Sarah was the first person to receive it. She was 18 and wanted to be a police officer. She had worked as a volunteer at the station. Everyone said she had the right spirit for police work. Sarah came forward to accept the scholarship. She shook hands with the chief and the mayor. Then she turned to Margaret. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson," she said. "I promise I will try to be the kind of officer your son would have been." Margaret hugged the young woman. "Michael would be happy it's you," she said. "I can tell you're brave like he was." After the ceremony, there was a small party. People talked and laughed. They shared stories about Michael and about other brave acts they had seen. It was not a sad event. It was a celebration of courage and service. James watched Margaret talking to people. She was smiling. She looked happy and at peace. The terrible grief that had almost destroyed her was now changed into something good. She had found a way to keep Michael's memory alive that helped others. As the party was ending, James and Margaret walked outside together. The sun was shining. Spring flowers were blooming. It was a beautiful day. "We did it," Margaret said to James. "We made something good from something terrible." James nodded. "Michael would be proud," he said, "of the scholarship, of you, of everything you've done." Margaret looked at James. "And of you too," she said. "You have honored his memory every day by being a good police officer, by helping people, by being my friend when I needed one most." They stood together in the sunshine. Two people whose lives had been changed forever by one brave act. Two people who had found a way to turn grief into purpose. Two people who had learned that even the darkest moments can lead to light if you keep moving forward with courage and hope. And somewhere James thought Michael is smiling. His sacrifice was not in vain. His memory lives on. His brave heart continues to inspire others. That is what it means to be a true hero. Retroclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. 3.7 Sonnet.